Good morning, world. Welcome to another episode of Xendependently Minded. If you are a new or returning listener, I truly hope you enjoy this episode. Before we get into the episode, here's a brief disclaimer. Enjoy. The views and opinions expressed by past, present, and future guests of Xendependently Minded have not been expressed by me, and they may not even be shared by me. The views and opinions that I express are, of course, satirical. If you're confused, then try this thought experiment to help you understand. If you like what I said, or say, and you agree, then you can tell yourself that it is my real opinion, and it's not satirical. If you don't agree with what I say, and you're disgusted and repulsed by it, then obviously I'm just being satirical. Obviously, these aren't my real opinions, because this is clearly a character, and nobody would actually have these opinions, would they? Anyway, enjoy the episode. How's it going, guys? It's your boy, Broke Man Podcaster, back at it with an episode in the midst of the chaos, the destruction following the quote-unquote Liberation Day from Orange Man, Hitler Man, Fascist Man Trump. You know who else announced Liberation Day before they started doing things similar to what Trump is doing today? Adolf Hitler. I know this comparison's never been made before, but I have a mullet and I have facial hair. You can trust me. This point has never been made before. I'm going to show people how smart I am, how awakened I am, by likening a United States president, a country with the most guaranteed rights upon birth in the entire planet. I'm going to call one of those leaders an actual fascist and equate them to maybe the most evil person to ever exist in human history, at least in recorded history. Anyway, I might sound a little congested because I've been crying. Just kidding. I haven't been crying. I'm back in Germany after a week-long trip in the States. Trip was great. I actually survived, yes. I'm here to tell the tale. I went to California and I came back and survived. Of course, I've joked about it before. No place is ever as bad as people say. It's never as bad as the media puts it. You can watch videos of horrible areas of California, of any state, any city, any country. There's beauty in every single part of this planet, depending on how you look at it. There are people that look out into the vast, seemingly unending desert of places in the Middle East and find beauty there. I know there's beauty to be found there. The safaris, the Great Plains of places in Africa, the coasts of Australia, the rural parts of the United States, farmland in France. Everybody can find beauty in every single place on this planet if you look at it the correct way, if you look at it with a glass half full way. Yes, this desert doesn't have water, it doesn't have green plant life, but it's strangely relaxing. It can be serene. This is coming from someone who has never been to the Middle East. The closest thing to the desert that I've ever been is either on a road trip through Route 66 or sand dunes in Colorado. But there's beauty to be found everywhere. Yeah, and now I'm congested because I came back. There's actual plant life being grown here in Germany, so my allergies flared up once we got here. But California is California. I mean, I'm from the Northern California area and then the Southern California area. I've lived before. It's almost like it's different states to me. It's such a big state. Northern California is a different place almost to me. It's, there was like actual green hills. There was potholes. The potholes are insane. I mean, I hate to anybody who's never lived abroad or at least driven abroad outside the United States, it sounds like I'm just being like, the roads are not perfect. There's a little rock on the road. It's not that. It's dangerous, the quality of the roads in most of the United States. There are very rarely small potholes or road damage around the areas that I live in Germany. And I don't live in a rich area. I live outside of a big city, about 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes away from a big city. I have to take a lot of back roads, so the back roads are not always in the best condition. But nothing compares to the potholes and the damage and the quality of the roads in places like Northern California. Even on the highway, it's insane. You have crater-sized holes in the middle of the highway. Cars don't have to pass inspections as far as the mechanical state of them, so there's just cars driving around looking like people who have collected half of the armor set in a fantasy game. You have cars with missing the front, half the front bumper, half the back. There's dents. There's like the passenger doors can't open because they're dented in from accidents. I'm like, how is this safe? It's not safe. That's the thing. There's a lot of accidents, car accidents in the United States, more so than other developed nations. So anyway, I'm back. I survived, and while I was gone, a couple things happened. I'm going to talk about 3 major things today. First one I wanted to talk about is the United States' first ever occurrence of market volatility. There has never been stock market volatility before in the history of the United States. In the 250-year history of the nation, the United States of America, there has never been stock market volatility until Donald Trump came in his second term. Forget his first term. His first term was a red herring. His first term was a Trojan horse. His first term, he got in from the help of Vladimir Putin. He did racist things. He allowed the COVID pandemic. He allowed COVID to spread through the air. He didn't suck all the COVID particles out of the air and prevent everyone from getting COVID. All the morbidly obese majority of Americans who are disgustingly unhealthy, including myself. He got in. He planted his hats like the chum bucket hats in the SpongeBob movie, and then he hypnotized half of the country and created the MAGA cult. And then Joe Biden came in. We had the adults in the room. We had normalization. We didn't have stock market volatility under Joe Biden. We didn't have 2 new wars pop off under Joe Biden. We didn't witness the complete destruction, the nail in the coffin for the middle class under Joe Biden. The United States didn't see the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history under Joe Biden. It was perfect. The adults were in the room. We didn't have any misinformation. We didn't have any misleading legacy slur media outlets committing crimes against the word journalism and the journalistic integrity, the ethics that journalists are supposed to have. Maybe they never had it. Maybe it was just a lie. Then Trump got back in, and all we've seen is death. Death and destruction. The stock market has lost, let me check my notes here, a gazillion, bajillion, dazillion dollars. There's no more money in the stock market. It's all gone. Donald Trump took it and sucked it and put it into his tanning beds. I don't know. I'm being half serious here. People are freaking out. All this translates to someone like me, to someone who really, truly understands the bare bones basics of stocks, the basics of economics, understands this is an opportunity to invest. The best investing advice that I ever got when I was growing up, when I was getting into stocks, was 2 pieces. First one came from my dad. He told me, here's what Warren Buffett says. Warren Buffett, if you guys don't know, he is the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. He is notorious for being one of the best investors, single investors in the entire United States. And Berkshire Hathaway is a great, I believe I forget the term, there's a term for these guys, but people go to them that have amounts of money and they entrusted with them to grow. So a lot of older people, retirees, businessmen and women, they go to Berkshire Hathaway and they say, hey, I have this much in cash, please make it grow. And Berkshire Hathaway is one of the best one of those companies. And the advice that I was given from my dad was do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. What is everybody doing right now? Why is the stock market tanked trillions of dollars in the past couple days? Because people are selling. So that's an opportunity to buy. The way I look at it, 99% of people, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, most people If I had a nickel, if I had a schmeckel for every time someone told me, "Oh yeah, this job is awesome. I got a 401k." And I just knew that they didn't know what a 401k actually meant. What is a 401k? What is a 401k? It's not just something that's guaranteed. It's not a savings account. It's not like a savings account you have with your bank where you put money in and it sits there. Nothing ever happens to it. Doesn't gain interest, or it might gain literally a penny of interest a year. A 401k is usually it's always actually with another company. Your employer has some type of 401k employer sponsored plan with a company. So I know people that have 401ks through their employers that are with Fidelity. I had one in the past with T. Rowe Price. All these companies take the money, depending on the plan that you have. Usually there's a set out plan that says 401k, employee sponsored plan, retirement date 2065 or 2070. And that plan, within that plan, you can open it up. You have the freedom to do it because it's your money. Your money goes into that fund and then it's distributed in hopes of hitting that 2065 retirement goal. So certain companies are better at handling 401ks than others. Some plans within companies are different depending on the time. So if you're an older person, if you're in your 40s or 50s and you sign up for this 401k, your plan is going to look a little different than someone like me who's 25. I still have quite a bit of years until retirement, or really retirement as in retirement and I can get Social Security. I can retire and depending on the plan, different plans like Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, 401ks, all these types of things, they have certain different laws as far as taxes and fees go if you try to take money out early. But my plan's going to look different. It's going to be possibly more geared for the long-term investments, more geared towards ETFs, more geared towards things that are safer, but they will gradually grow over time. So low risk, low reward. And then people who are older, their plans might be a little more aggressive because they have less time to save, because they started planning later, or they have other means, and this is just a little cherry on top as far as retirement funds go. Most of the time, people don't know what 401ks are. Same goes for tariffs. Same goes for apparently the basics of the stock market. So the level of insanity that I've seen, I'm going to, as I get into this, I'm going to share just verbally, I'm going to share some of my favorite, I want to say mean things, but just truly uninformed, uneducated takes on this stock market volatility. But like I joked earlier before, this isn't the first time we've had stock market volatility. This isn't the first time we've had dips in the stock market. We've had dips in the stock market. They happen. It happens all the time. The problem is that people are, again, receiving their outrage instructions and deciding that today I am an economics expert, I'm a tariffs expert, and I am a stock market expert. Last week, it was I am a security clearance expert, I'm a military operations expert. A couple months before, it was on election integrity, it was on Palestine, it was on China, it was on NVIDIA, it was on whatever it is that they were receiving outrage instructions from. I'll give you a spoiler. The outrage instruction is coming from the legacy slur media. Sound the alarms. The legacy slur media are not dead. Not only are they not dead, they're thriving. They were never going to go away. They were just going to rebrand. They were going to pretend that they were now going. So many different news outlets announced, we are now going to start telling the truth, because it turns out completely lying to our viewers, our small number of viewers, the number of viewers that we have are less than some niche podcast that talks about pottery. Turns out lying to our audience, our small audience, is not profitable. So now we're going to tell the truth. We saw a bunch of firings from CNN, saw a bunch of firings from MSNBC. All they're doing is rebranding, getting better at lying, getting sneaker at lying. And a lot of the times, these legacy media outlets, they're also just repurposing into social media types of news. So headlines on digital platforms, clips, you know, podcast interviews or debates, things like that. So first off, I wanted to start with tariffs. Really the main reason why the stock market has taken these massive hits the last couple days. And today it is April 6th, Sunday. So I'm sure Monday it'll continue to spiral down. It'll continue to drop. And as I said, that's just more opportunity for people who understand how these things work. This isn't the end of the United States economy. This isn't the end of the corporate apparatus in the United States. If it was, if this country was going to war, if it was being invaded, and every corporation, every S&P 500 company was being destroyed, then yeah, it would be time to sell and permanently sell, and then pack your bags and run. But the United States corporate apparatus and the United States country, the United States economy is not over. The economy is not in great shape, hasn't been in great shape for a while. Actually, I say it hasn't been in great shape by United States standards, but as far as the rest of the world, it is still the most powerful economy. Still has the largest GDP in the entire world. So it's doing fine. Imagine how much better it could be doing if we started producing more, if we started manufacturing more, and we started consuming less possibly. First thing I wanted to talk about is tariffs. And I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not an expert. Maybe you guys started listening to this episode and thought, oh, this guy must have a PhD in economics and he runs the World Economic Forum. Nope. I'm just somebody who has access to the internet, as does most of the developed world, if not the entire developed world. Even parts of the undeveloped world have internet access. So I just used my supercomputer that's in my pocket and used it to do some research on tariffs. Tariffs, I didn't really understand too much before the outrage on tariffs recently. I remember talking about them. I remember learning about them in school in those big, bulky hardcover textbooks, those in civics class, in history class, geography class. First off, tariffs are used around the world. So pretending that they're violent acts of damage being perpetrated by the orange fascist Hitler man Trump is stupid. And it's a new fake talking point for uneducated bugs. No offense to bugs. No offense to bug people. But most people truly are just moths. And every single outrage point, every talking point the legacy media perpetrates, that they push out, that's the lamp. Everyone else, most of the public are true bugs. This is a bug talking point to act like tariffs are an act of violence. Of course, you have leaders across the world that are spouting this nonsense. It's Justin Trudeau, former Prime Minister of Canada, disgraced scumbag, criminal felon, a-hole, douchebag. He made it sound like this has never been done before. Tariffs are unheard of. Meanwhile, there are tariffs that Canada has on United States products, specifically dairy. I know a lot of people, I received a couple comments and messages about tariffs that Canada has on American dairy, saying, "Well, it's only if it's in excess. It's excess American dairy that's sold." The point that I'm making now is that tariffs have existed. Every single country that has an economy that's worth defending and preserving has tariffs. Germany has tariffs on American products. Japan has tariffs on German products. Italy has tariffs on South African products. Every single nation participates in tariffs in some form or another. Tariffs are meant to protect national economies. The issue with America has been that we've been an overwhelmingly consumer economy for far too long. This move away from a producer economy to a largely consumer economy started in the 80s. We still create a lot of stuff, but the things that we create most of, that we sell the most of, that make the most money for our GDP, for our economy, is large aircraft, weapons, pharmaceuticals, and a little bit of technology. So like NVIDIA, chips, Intel is an American company. I believe AMD is an American company. So we're still producing stuff. It's not like we don't. If we didn't produce stuff, we wouldn't exist. No country can exist purely off of consumption. And if they do, they're not a strong economy. They're not a strong nation. We happen to be the largest and strongest economy in the entire world. So we are still well ahead of China as far as economic strength. The United States GDP, the United States economy accounts for like a quarter of the world's economy. And we're not even the largest country. So that's impressive, obviously. That speaks on the United States' strength and ability to expand. Even today, year over year, even though it's gotten worse since the 1980s, the United States economy is still growing. It might be growing at a slower rate. It might be growing at a trajected rate that will eventually have us passed up by China, because China, what they're doing is they're producing a lot of smaller stuff. They're producing smaller stuff that is used by day-to-day humans across the globe. The United States, like I said, we do sell things that are used maybe not day-to-day, that are maybe used frequently, but we're not selling large quantities of them. We're not selling 1 million Boeing aircraft a year. China is selling millions and millions of little plastic trinkets that are used. They're sold for 49 cents, but when you do the math, a high quantity of it, it's the reason why their economy is growing, and it's why, you can't exist without using multiple Chinese products every single day. It's just how it is. To save the United States economy, I've said this many times before, it's really basic. It's a little messed up because it kind of highlights the greediness of corporations, of business people, but this is a fact that people need to be comfortable with. Businesses exist for one purpose: to make money. Period. You can listen to a bunch of different businesses claim, I got into this because when I was a kid, I created knee pads for bikes because when I was a kid, I scraped my knee and it hurt really bad. So I created this because I care about the kids. If you cared about the kids, but you didn't care about money, you'd make it for free. Businesses exist to make money, as they should. The way that you save the United States, one of the ways to save the economy, not just for the short term, this is the problem. Right now we're facing short-term pain, short-term volatility, in the hopes of fostering long-term growth and recovery from decades, starting with the 80s, of terrible economic policy. The way you do this is you need to start producing more. Obviously, that's easier said than done. How do you start producing more? Why is the United States not manufacturing things like cars? Why do we have quote-unquote American cars that aren't even manufactured in the United States? That's a problem. One of the ways that we can bring manufacturing jobs, like on things like cars, back to the United States is by lowering the corporate tax rate. I know that this is something that a lot of people get disgusted by, they get upset by, but it's very basic. It's very basic to understand. The 3% or 5% tax increase on corporations, that hurts consumers, that hurts regular people, regular day-to-day, blue-collar, hardworking Americans more than it hurts the corporations. Because what they do when that 3 to 5% ends up translating into millions, if not billions of dollars, they just take manufacturing overseas. Because it's more expensive to pay that, it hurts profit to stay in the United States. So why don't we just go overseas where manufacturing is cheaper? Is there a way? I've asked this many times because, of course, I said I'm not an expert on economics. Is there a way that we can incentivize Americans to stay, American production to stay within our borders, to not only produce things in America, but create jobs and sustain jobs for Americans? Or is there, even better, a way to disincentivize, to punish these companies that go overseas? That's another topic for discussion. But Trump has attempted this before. He did this in 2016 in his first term. He's doing it now. He cut the corporate tax rate a little bit to bring back these manufacturing jobs. The problem is that every time this happens, every time there is a corporate tax break, it only lasts for that 4 to 8 year administration. and then it's reversed. And then we're back down the path of destruction. And whatever little recovery we made, possibly in the Trump's first term economically, the economic boom we had, the housing market boom when he was president, these things get undone, and then we're right back down to square one, if not lower, worse off. So we need to produce more. If the United States starts to produce more, I'm not saying that we can't be a consumption economy, but we need to produce more because we're consuming far more than we produce. We need to bring production levels up. So when tariffs are passed, it incentivizes and it encourages Americans to buy American-made products. If you put a 25% tariff on Japanese-made cars in the United States, and you start to produce quality American vehicles for the first time since long before I was born, probably before my parents were even born, if you go back to the classic American cars that ran forever, the engines were robust, they sounded beautiful, they just lasted forever. Pair that with a 25% tariff on Japanese cars, people might start buying American cars more because they're cheaper and they might be more reliable. They're never going to be better than Japanese cars, but they'll be cheaper, so people will buy them. That is the point of tariffs. That's the goal. That's the end goal of these tariffs. The end goal of this quote-unquote Liberation Day by Trump. Of course, there's going to be short-term panic. There's going to be short-term responses from companies around the world that sell things in the United States. I saw, oh no, let's start clutching pearls. I literally know 0 people who own this car brand, but Range Rover, Land Cruiser, whatever, notorious for being some of the most junk pieces of trash cars ever made. They're made in the UK. Some of the worst, most unreliable, expensive to work on, least dependable car makes in the entire world. And I'm not just saying that because they're butt ugly pieces of trash, pieces of garbage, Power Ranger, go-kart looking hunks of trash. Every time I see one on the road, I think my life expectancy decreases by a day or two. They announced that they're going to halt production. They're going to halt shipments to the United States. Oh no. Newsflash. Americans are broker than they've ever been. Americans are broker than they've ever been, and they're not buying Range Rovers. Sorry. Screw off the UK. You can keep your pieces of trash cars. Nobody likes them anyways. Only materialistic weirdos who have $100K to spend on a brand new Range Rover and then $100K for the next year for repairs gives a crap about Range Rovers. So there's going to be quite a few companies that are deciding, well, in response, we're going to halt production. We're going to halt production in the United States. We're going to halt shipments and sales. It's temporary. These companies they're going to do this. This is kind of a bluff. This is a bluff. Nintendo is not going to stop selling Nintendo products in the United States. They're not going to stop shipping products to the United States because the United States economy, the consumers of the United States make a lot of money for these companies. These companies can pearl clutch and act like tariffs are an act of terrorism on them, but they need American money. They always will. This economy is too large for any large corporation, any international company to not want to take part in. So that's been the main, that and American companies, American corporations just losing a little bit of faith in the short term. There's lots of reasons for why a stock plummets, why a stock falls. It can just be that encouraging news for a competitor comes out. It could be that there's a worldwide epidemic, worldwide pandemic that happened in 2020 with COVID. There could be something like this. News, economic policies can obviously affect the stock market. But the thing with this is, so tariffs not only, the first part of the plan to save the economy for the long term should be to obviously focus on bringing manufacturing back to the United States. This employs people. We need to sustain these jobs. It shouldn't just be for 4 years until the next president gets in and decides, I'm going to tax the rich. Because that's such a moot talking point. People sit there and they think, first of all, most people are not business owners. Most people are not successful business owners. So the select few in a population that truly understand what it means to run a business, they understand. They have the best tax lawyers. They have the best team to maximize profits, because that is the goal for businesses. Most people have never ran a business. Most people didn't take a business class. Most people don't understand what it takes to run a business. So when people like Bernie Sanders sit here and say, we're in debt 37 trillion and the economy is collapsing because we need to tax millionaires and billionaires. There are not enough billionaires in the United States to make a noticeable dent on the debt at all. That's not how economics works. It's very basic to understand. There's not that many billionaires in the United States. And the term billionaire, the term millionaire, does not mean that they make $1 billion a year. Does not mean that they have $1 billion in cash to be taxed. It means that they have assets that are worth $1 million or $1 billion. I don't have $1 million worth the assets. $1 million is not that much if you think about it. If you have a small garage where you have 3 or 4 employees, you have mechanics, you work on 10 to 20 cars a week. I don't know, I'm just throwing something at the wall. The value of the tools, the value of the machines, the value of the building, the land that the building is on, the revenue that comes in on a regular basis, that all contributes to you having the status, the owner of this business having the status of being a millionaire. If that business is worth $1 million in all of its stuff is worth $1 million. Are you, because you have 4 employees, destroying America? Are you the reason why the debt is at 37 trillion? Are you the reason why most people can't afford a $1,000 emergency? No. So increasing the tax rate on these people is not going to help anybody. It's not going to help anybody except for the big guy. It's not going to help anybody except corporations. It's not going to help anybody except for corporate mechanics, corporate car manufacturers. Because guess what? This guy, this extra tax burden, he was barely above water. He's barely breaking even. Now he's below. He's going to shut down his shop. Where are all the people that need their cars to be worked on going to go on? They're just going to go to the dealership. Now they're going to go get their cars worked on at the Toyota dealership. That doesn't help the little guy. Bernie Sanders doesn't know what he's talking about. Or worse, he does know what he's talking about. He's just evil. I happen to believe that he's not an inherently bad person. He just doesn't understand. It is what it is. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. There's things that I like that he stood for or pretended to stand for in the past and doesn't stand for anymore. Pharmaceuticals, big pharma. Anyway, taxing billionaires is not a way you cannot tax yourself into success, into a robust economy. It's never happened before. It never will happen. If you bring back manufacturing jobs and you institute these tariffs, not only can you bring back manufacturing jobs and start producing more things that people actually need or use or want, or that are better than the other alternatives out there, that's one step. Tariffs also, depending on the type, also kind of incentivize manufacturing jobs to come back to the United States from American companies. So if a tariff can be used, like I said earlier, to incentivize or disincentivize American companies from bringing manufacturing jobs, or disincentivize them from taking manufacturing jobs and sending them to Mexico or China. So the problem with this is, though, people are hurting now. They can't afford things now. And Americans want immediate and instant results. Unfortunately, this issue has taken decades to dig this hole that we're in right now. It's going to take decades to fix. You can't just fix it overnight. And the problem, of course, is that, like I said before, these steps were taken in 2016. They were reversed when Joe Biden got into office. After Donald Trump leaves, they most likely will be reversed again. Doesn't even have to be a Democrat that becomes elected, because 99% of Republicans are spineless, pro-corporate, elitist, pro-war scumbags. They're all the same. So I say all this to say the future is still bright. Some of the funniest takes that I've seen from this have not just come from the media. I don't pay attention to the media. There's always it always makes me laugh when you look at people's responses. It always makes me chuckle when I look at people's responses, and you can tell that, one, they don't know what they're talking about, and two, they most definitely got this. They're repeating a talking point that they just heard, either from social media, the legacy slur media, or quote-unquote economists. And I say economist as one of the top 3 most pathetic, retarded, worthless titles of all time. I don't even have a title. Because I'm not educated enough. I don't have I'm not royalty. I'm not a junior or a third or the fourth of my name. But I would rather die titleless than be called an economist. If someone carved economist into my headstone, to my tombstone, I would come back alive immediately and haunt that person for the rest of my life. Right now, people are being taken advantage of because the legacy slur media knows that most people don't understand tariffs. They don't understand economics. And that's fine. Everybody doesn't need to be an economist. Everybody doesn't need to be an expert on economics. I'm not an expert on economics. You don't have to be an expert on economics to take part in conversations like this, to feel that your vote matters, to feel that you understand what's going on, to make informed decisions. That's the thing about being an American. That's the thing about being a human in 2025. There's no excuse for being uninformed. There is no excuse for being uninformed. There might be a little one. And that's blaming your upbringing. Not shaming people's families. I'm talking about public education. Again, I've said this 1,000 times before, and I'll say it 1,000 times more. Public school should teach. There's 3 things that kids should learn in public school. 1, empathy. 2, social skills. 3, how to critically think. If those 3 things happened at a more efficient rate in the United States, we wouldn't have most of the problems that we have. Empathy, you learn from socializing. Social skills, you learn from socializing. So that's 2 things that will happen naturally. Humans are social creatures. Kids, you don't have to teach them how to make friends. Most of them will make friends without being forced to, without being taught how to, because we're social creatures naturally. So those 2 things are kind of done automatically if the kids are going to school. So that's another part of the problem. Participation, attendance, a move towards more digital classrooms. And then the third one is critical thinking, or the ability to teach yourself. Kids need to learn how to learn. Public school, K through 12, should be teaching kids how to learn. So when they get out of school, they continue to learn. Because K through 12 you should learn 5% of what you know, maybe 10% of what you're ever going to know, you should learn in public school. You need to be prepared to be able to understand. You need to learn how to research. You need to learn how to critically think. So that way, when you make decisions as an adult, you can make informed decisions. You can do research. You can go to the library. You can go onto the computer. You can use your phone. You can look at what a 401k is. Should I do a 401k? Should I do a Roth IRA? Can I open an interest-bearing savings account? Should I invest in single stocks? Should I buy real estate? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I open a laundromat? Should I get a vending machine? These are all things that you can figure out with a few hours, with a few days, with a few weeks of research on the supercomputer that we all have in our pockets. Most households have 3 to 5, I would predict, supercomputers. Their smartphones, their iPads, their actual desktop computers, their laptops. Even TVs can do research for you now. You can speak into a Fire Stick. You can speak into a smart TV and have it look up things for you. That all being said, I'm not shaming people for not understanding tariffs in economics, basic economics, because it's complicated. It's complex. There are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of factors. And today's world is new. It's advanced. Most economists, quote unquote, most people have never lived, not most, all people have never lived in 2025. All people have never lived through a technologically advanced time like this. Now, it's possible that Atlantis existed. It's possible that the creation of the pyramids was used with the technology that we haven't even discovered yet. I'm not saying that people in the past were just all a bunch of Neanderthals, all a bunch of cavemen who didn't understand anything. What I'm trying to say is I give people a pass on that front. Where I don't give people a pass is when they just start to spout and repeat talking points they know they don't believe. They know they don't understand. But it's because it's tribal. It comes from their side. So I've seen a lot of people say a lot of really funny things. They'll quote economists, quote unquote. Here's what I think about economists, if I haven't made it clear already. If you're an economist, if you're a self-proclaimed or even an actual, or definitively by title, like actual professional title, you're an economist. If you call yourself an economist, but you haven't used every waking breath of your career to sound the alarm on the policies that have gotten us where we are today, then you're an actual fart in the wind. At least a fart in the wind is funny. You are worthless to me. You are completely worthless if you've sat by proudly telling people, oh yeah, well, I'm an economist. I've spent 40 years of my life studying economics, macro and microeconomics. Yeah, you have. Is that true? And you haven't said a word about these policies? You haven't sounded the alarm on the United States becoming an overwhelmingly consumer economy? You haven't sounded the alarm on the destruction of manufacturing in the United States? You haven't sounded the alarm on the fact that the United States today has more personal debt than it has ever had before? Personal debt means debt that can be attributed to individuals. So it can be credit card debt, mortgage debt, personal loan debt. So things like you go out to a bank and you take out a loan and you're in debt. You're behind on payments. We are literally the brokest we've ever been. We owe money on an individual basis more than we ever have. And you want to brag that you're an economist. You want to brag you're a nerd that's misinforming and brainwashing people into saying stupid stuff like the things that I've been saying lately. Some of the funniest stuff that I've heard from people is, one, I saw someone say, the stock market has lost $9 trillion. It's lost $9 trillion in 2 days. And if you divide that up into every American, that's $30,000 per person that's out of their pocket. That's not how a stock market works. That's not how stocks work. The stock market is not indicative of the financial health of Americans. Like I just said, the figure that I just shared, personal debt being the highest it's ever been, that's a better indicator on the health of Americans. Because guess what? Anywhere from 40 to 60% of Americans cannot afford a $1,000 emergency. It was the same today during this market volatility. It was the same a month ago when the market was posting all-time highs for certain companies. It was the same a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Since the pandemic, before that, there were still a lot of people who couldn't afford a $1,000 emergency, but especially after the pandemic, 40 to 60% of Americans cannot afford a $1,000 emergency. If that doesn't show you that the stock market doesn't exclusively show the health of Americans, day-to-day Americans, then I don't know what does. There are a lot of people that I know, a lot of friends and family that I distinctly remember in an attempt to discredit Donald Trump in the economy that Trump presided over in his first administration. They looked at the stock market and said, oh, who cares if the stock market is strong? Stock market doesn't mean anything for regular people. Stock market is just a board game for rich people to play with money and make more money. It doesn't matter. Those same people who said the stock market doesn't matter because of a fundamental misunderstanding and lack of education on how the stock market works, those same people Literally, some of the exact same people today are saying things like, money's being taken out of your pocket, Trump is personally draining your bank account, and he's using it to buy islands and blah, blah, blah. Neither of those are true. The stock market is not a complete indicator on the health of individual Americans. It's more of an indicator on the strength and the health of American corporations. Some of the other funny things that I've seen people say, I saw somebody say, these tariffs and this destruction of the stock market just guarantees, just further proves the point that Trump is a Putin asset. So this guy somehow brought the Russiagate hoax into this temporary market volatility. And he's saying, well, so what does that mean? Trump is purposely tanking the economy to kiss up to Putin? What? That guy actually needs to go back on his meds. Maybe I'll check on him later and ask him if he took his meds this morning, because no sane, non-schizophrenic person would say something like that. But nevertheless, they did. I seen it with my own 2 eyes. So, I say all this to say, look at this as an opportunity. Look at this as an opportunity to, if you didn't understand stocks before, if you don't understand why the stock market's down, if you want to understand, and if you don't, that's fine. A lot of people are fine with spouting complete garbage, complete nonsense. They don't know that they're spouting complete nonsense. They're repeating paid off on the payroll of certain powers that be's economists. Some of these economists are on the payrolls of people, and they're just running defense for these people, spouting propaganda, spouting lies, being brainwashed, and not knowing, I'm not trying to say that everybody who says something that's incorrect is a bad person. Actually, for the most part, for the most part, people are good. An uninformed person is not a bad person. Lots of people don't have time to pay attention to this stuff, but they're being taken advantage of. The legacy media knows that people are too busy to pay attention to look deeply into a lot of these issues. That's why when they put headlines out that are obviously fake, obviously slanted, obviously, if not outright false, very, very, very biased and misleading, they do this on purpose because they know that most people don't have time to look into it, or they just don't care to. So take this as an opportunity to educate yourself on stocks. Is there money to still be made if everybody's selling right now? When is the right time to buy? What are some sectors that are able to withstand these tariffs? What are some sectors that are up right now? Because there are a couple that are up right now. There are some companies that are still performing just fine. How long might this take? How long might this temporary pain last? What is a 401k? What is a Roth IRA? Why is my retirement money all of a sudden, why do I think that it's all of a sudden at risk? Is it actually at risk? How can I better prepare for something like this in the future? These are all things that you can do, you can handle with the supercomputer in your pocket right now. You can stop listening to this podcast, maybe finish the episode, but after you're done, go and revamp your retirement plan. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the fine print on every single one of these companies, whether it's Charles Schwab, Vanguard, Berkshire Hathaway, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, all of these 401ks, Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, all of these have a small print at the bottom that says, there's no guarantee that this will rise in value. It may even decrease in value. Sometimes it's not even FDIC insured. So nothing is guaranteed in this life. Nothing is guaranteed, especially with money, with stocks, with investments. Nothing is guaranteed. You can find the safest, quote unquote, investment, something like bonds, still not guaranteed to make you money. Still not guaranteed to make you money. Nothing ever is. So to sit here and act like, thanks a lot, Trump, my 401k, my retirement is going to suck now. No, your retirement's probably going to suck because of you. There's no excuse. I have grown up kind of understanding, and now that I'm an adult, I have control over my finances. I've understood. I've kind of, haven't planned for Social Security to be there or to be meaningful in any way when I retire. If it is, that's great. But I'm not relying on Social Security when I retire. In 2025, you can plan for retirement. You don't need to blame anybody else for your failures or your potential failures. And don't forget, when it comes to stocks, you don't lose until you sell. So if you have 100 shares of Nvidia and you're panicking at the price right now, don't sell. Because if you sell, you're actually losing. If you hold on and it bounces back, you'll be fine. So stay strong. Don't invest emotionally. It's another piece of advice that I was told that I want to share. Don't invest emotionally. Use your supercomputer to plan this stuff and stop spouting lies. Stop spouting propaganda. You don't have to like Trump. Continue not liking Trump. But if you've already decided when you've woken up that today something bad is going to happen and it'll happen exclusively because of Trump, we wouldn't have had volatility if it wasn't for Trump, you're just lying to yourself. At least have some pride in that if you spout an opinion, it's an opinion that you truly believe, it's an opinion you truly researched, you truly understand, and it is your unique thoughts, not somebody else's, not a quote-unquote economist's opinion. This is something that you truly have looked into and you understand. I respect anybody that I disagree with wholeheartedly on a subject if I can tell that they actually believe what they say. Because with things as complex as economics and business, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Therefore, another guy can be correct and I can be correct at the same time, and neither of us are wrong. That's the case with economics, with business, and with politics as a whole. So, that all being said, stay firm, stay strong. I know it is stressful. I'm not discounting that at all. I'm not going to sit here and act like I haven't avoided looking at my Roth IRA. But just have to remind yourself, these things are temporary. Look at it on a bigger picture. The United States is the world's strongest economy. We're $9 trillion ahead, I believe, as far as our total GDP. We are so far ahead the second place country, which is China, that we're fine. We're going to be okay. There are some long-term improvements that need to be made in order for us to stay number one, but it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. The last thing I wanted to talk about was Signalgate. Signalgate, aka in the same category as Russiagate, aka fake story, non-story. There's almost nothing really here, but I'm going to talk about it anyways, just to dispel any misunderstanding. So for those of you who don't know, Signalgate is a story that consists of a supposed journalist, and I use the biggest air quotes of all time for this guy, a supposed journalist for The Atlantic, which, by the way, truly one of the worst outlets on the entire planet. Has been for a long time, still continues to be. Before this, there was an article, there's a headline in The Atlantic that said something along the lines of, "The myth of the child trafficking crisis." Really? So there isn't a child trafficking crisis in the world right now that actually exists. Okay, so that just kind of tells you what kind of an outlet The Atlantic is. So supposedly there's a journalist that was accidentally added to a Signal group chat that consisted of a few of Trump's cabinet appointees, J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and a few other high-ranking Trump appointees. This guy claims that he was added to it, and there were operations and plans regarding strikes, military strikes on the Houthis that were shared, and he saw them. So, according to this guy's story, this is the story that he said himself, that he spoke, because he immediately went to, well, actually he didn't, this is what's funny. He went to The Atlantic, and then he wrote a piece that said, "I was accidentally added to a Signal group chat that discussed war plans with Yemen war plans." So right away, people looked at this headline and went, what the heck? I didn't vote for war with Yemen. Why are we going to war with Yemen? Look into it a little deeper. In the article, he says, so about 2 or 3 weeks before I decided to share this story and report it, I was accidentally added to a Signal chat where they were discussing plans on strikes against Houthis. So immediately the headline is a bunch of BS. It's a lie. We aren't going to war with Yemen. We are retaliating against Houthi terrorists who have attacked not only our ships, but are attacking and terrorizing international waters that are affecting supply chains for every single country that goes through there. The Houthis are terrorists, they're pirates, they're hijacking, they're kidnapping, and they're stealing products from people. And they're also attacking United States Navy ships. So we're not going to war with Yemen. We're not declaring war on Yemen. That was a lie. Are we drone striking the crap out of Yemen? Yeah, we are doing that. We have been doing it for a long time, and it's something that I've been outspoken against. But we're not going to war with Yemen. We're not starting a war. So that was something that this guy he knew what he was saying. He knew what it sounded like. Did that on purpose. Then, as screenshots emerged, or the actual things that were being discussed on the Signal chat were released and discussed, turns out there weren't actually any critical operations, plans, sensitive critical information that were being shared. So this guy completely lied, completely misinformed, and took advantage of the public. Most people do not have security clearances. Most people are not clearance holders, and therefore they don't understand how clearances work. For those of you who don't know, Signal is a messaging app that a lot of officials that work for the government, especially in the military, they use Signal because it's supposedly more secured than other apps like WhatsApp, regular text, things like that. But if someone has a security clearance, it means that they're trusted with access to escalating levels of sensitive or highly critical information. It depends on the level of the clearance and the access, of course. The Secretary of Defense, absolutely, I don't even have to look this up. I know he has a top secret, probably higher than a top secret. There are levels to clearances. I'm not going to explain them here, but it starts with the secret, top secret, and then there are things above top secret that just grant you more access. But a top secret is the highest clearance you can have. And then there are extra things you have to do, extra investigations, extra boxes you have to check to get access to even more important information. So, that all being said, when you have a clearance, there are certain ways that you have to communicate things. If you're to communicate sensitive information, there are ways that you have to do it. There are secured, safe ways that you have to do it to prevent leakage, to prevent enemies from getting a hold of things that could damage the United States. Signal, the messaging app, is not one of those methods. I know that for a fact. Depending on the sensitivity of the things that you talk about, sometimes you can only talk about it with certain people that have clearances as well. You've seen this in movies when they call it need to know, or you have a file that says classified on it. There are just certain ways that you're supposed to go about communicating sensitive information. Leakage happens, obviously. A lot of leakage could be stuff that's not non-sensitive, non-critical. Could just be people in passing talking about something in public that they probably are not supposed to be talking about. But when it's non-sensitive and non-critical, it's not usually something that enemies could get their hands on, and it can all of a sudden put people at risk. If this Signal chat had a critical operations plans, times, dates, names of operations, number of troops involved, number of ships involved, striking patterns, things like this, that clearly would be a huge leak, a huge national security risk, which should be investigated, and then whoever spread that information, whoever initiated this conversation, and anybody that took part in it, knowing that this was a security risk, those people should get their clearances revoked, and they should be punished the same way that a regular person would, which, if you have a clearance, you knowingly or unknowingly, which would affect the severity of the crime, share critical or sensitive information. You can start with just clearance being revoked, loss of pay, loss of rank if you're in the military, and it could result in imprisonment. So, whatever the crime is for this, as a result of this investigation, the The law should be administered equally. Just because it was potentially high-ranking Trump appointees doesn't mean that they shouldn't be punished if said leaks happen. But we know that it didn't happen. There was no sensitive, there was no critical military operations details that were shared. The text really just showed a lack of unity when it came to these strikes. I'm pretty sure from what I saw, J.D. Vance was, not in favor of these strikes, not in favor of this kind of stuff. Pete Hegseth was trying to be more, using his military expertise, trying to say, well, I understand your perspective. It was just a discussion. It was just a discussion on the supposed plan to potentially carry out these strikes. So this story was fake. It was played up, and it was used to purposely mislead people into thinking that the Trump administration and all of its appointees are just sharing a bunch of horrible things. If they could share military war plans with Yemen, they could absolutely share people's social security numbers, their bank account numbers. That's why the stock markets collapsed, because Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio took my Roth IRA account numbers and drained it into a personal offshore Swiss account. That's really like the conclusion that The Atlantic and other legacy slur media sites have wanted people to come to. Because immediately after this, there was a coordinated effort across all of legacy media to call for Pete Hegseth to resign, to call for a deep investigation and a firing of a bunch of people. If that doesn't scream coordinated attack, fake story, or at least played up story, I'm not saying that they should continue talking about these things through Signal, because Signal may not be perfect. It could be penetrated possibly by hackers. But I'm just saying it doesn't need to be played up like they were texting at this time and this date, the USS Cough Drop is going to strike off the coast of blah, 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 putting those sailors, those troops, those military personnel at risk. But that didn't happen. In The Atlantic and this fake journalist, they know it didn't happen. So that's going to do it for this episode as Independently Minded. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Hope you're staying informed. Hope you're staying hydrated. Like I said, I encourage everybody to possibly, if you think that your retirement plan is not as secure as you want it to be, maybe revamp it. You should always be doing that anyways. Unless you have, something like an interest-bearing savings account or real estate, which real estate is also something that is constantly evolving, you should always be revamping. You should always be kind of tinkering, dinking and dunking in certain industries with the stock market, with 401ks, with IRAs. Because some industries are up, some are down, some are the same, some are safer, some are riskier. Just do your research, and everything is going to be okay. I don't want anybody to feel panicked. I don't want anybody to feel stressed or feel like all their hard work is lost, because it's not. This is temporary pain for long-term growth and stability. I don't know if I have a specific recommendation to give you guys this week. When I was on the plane flying to California, I did watch a movie I'd wanted to watch for a long time called The Last Samurai. Tom Cruise movie. Takes place in Japan. It's really good. I recommend that. But honestly, probably most people have already seen it, so I don't really truly have a recommendation. So I hope you guys stay safe. Hope you stay hydrated. And I will catch you on the next episode. Thanks for the support. And as always, stay safe and stay away from those crazies out there. Thank you.